1 year after humanity left the Galactic Council, the old order was completely gone. What had taken thousands of years to build had collapsed in just 12 months. The Great Hall, where species once gathered to debate the future of civilization, now stood empty except for maintenance robots cleaning dust from abandoned seats. The speaker was one of the last to leave. She walked through the corridors that had once bustled with diplomats and translators and staff members from dozens of worlds. Now her footsteps echoed in the silence. She paused at the human section where Teho and Hyjin had sat during that final meeting. Their chairs were still there, but they looked smaller than she remembered. It was hard to believe that two beings from such a young species had held so much power in their quiet competence. The council had officially dissolved 3 months earlier. The remaining member species had split into smaller groups based on geography and cultural similarity. Some were trying to maintain their old territories through military force. Others had retreated to their homeworlds and closed their borders to outside contact. A few had swallowed their pride and applied for membership in the new Terran Alliance. The alliance had grown beyond anyone's expectations. What started as a partnership between humanity and a handful of younger species had become the dominant power in the galaxy. Their territory now included over 200 star systems and was expanding every month. Captain Ba'ura commanded the exploration ship that was making first contact with civilizations the old council had ignored or dismissed. She was young even by human standards, but she had learned diplomacy from masters like Teho and Su Young. She understood that every species had something valuable to offer, if you just took the time to listen. The latest species to join the alliance were the crystalline entities from the Magellanic Clouds. The old council had refused to even acknowledge them as intelligent life forms because they did not have biological bodies. But Ba'ura recognized their unique ability to process quantum information and welcomed them as full members. The crystallines brought with them computational abilities that revolutionized Alliance technology. Their quantum minds could solve problems that would take biological brains millions of years to figure out. In partnership with human creativity and intuition, they were developing technologies that seemed like magic to the older galactic civilizations. The success of the Alliance was built on principles that the old council had never understood. Every species was valued for their unique strengths rather than judged by their weaknesses. Leaders were chosen based on competence rather than political connections. Decisions were made through consensus and cooperation rather than majority votes that created winners and losers. Most importantly, the Alliance understood that diversity was a source of strength rather than a problem to be managed. The more different perspectives you could bring to any challenge, the more likely you were to find an innovative solution. This philosophy was put to the test when the Alliance faced their first major crisis. A plague had broken out on the mining world of New Kepler. The disease affected multiple species in different ways, and was spreading faster than anyone could contain it. The old council would have spent months forming committees and scheduling meetings and following established protocols for medical emergencies. By the time they acted, the plague would have spread throughout the galaxy. The Alliance response was swift and decisive. Human doctors who understood the emotional aspects of disease treatment worked with crystalline quantum computers that could model viral mutations in real time. Aquarium biochemists who specialized in waterborne pathogens collaborated with silicoid engineers who could build sterile containment facilities. Within 2 weeks, they had not only stopped the plague but developed treatments for all affected species. The cure was freely shared with every civilization in the galaxy, including the few remaining council holdouts. This generous act of medical diplomacy convinced many fence-sitting species to join the Alliance. They could see that humanity and their partners were building something genuinely different from the old power structures. The former council species watched these developments with growing desperation. Their territories were shrinking as colonies and protectorates defected to the Alliance. Their economies were failing without access to the new technologies being developed in human space. Their military forces were no match for Alliance ships that incorporated innovations from dozens of different scientific traditions. Some tried to fight back through sabotage and terrorism. But these efforts only drove more species away from them and toward the Alliance. It was clear that the old ways of thinking about galactic politics were not just obsolete but actively harmful. The Zephyrian homeworld, which had almost been destroyed by the asteroid that the Council could not organize to stop, became the site of the Alliance's new capital. The planet had been saved by a joint human crystalline mission that used quantum calculations to precisely redirect the asteroid into a stable orbit where it now served as a mining station. The symbolism was not lost on anyone. Where the old Council had failed through bureaucracy and in fighting the new Alliance had succeeded through cooperation and innovation. President Dongwu of Earth was elected as the first Director General of the Alliance. It was a mostly ceremonial position since real decisions were made by consensus among member species. But it sent a clear message about humanity's role in the new galactic order. In his acceptance speech, Dongwu talked about the lessons humanity had learned from their time in the old Council. He spoke about the importance of respecting every voice and valuing every contribution. He promised that the Alliance would never repeat the mistakes of the past by dismissing any species as too primitive or too different to matter. The speech was broadcast throughout Alliance space and beyond, on worlds still controlled by former Council species citizens, gathered in secret to listen to words they had never heard from their own leaders. Words about cooperation and respect and building a better future together. Revolution was in the air. Not the violent kind that destroyed everything in its path, but the quiet kind that grew from hope and possibility. Species that had been kept in subordinate positions for millennia were discovering they had choices they never knew existed. The final blow to the old order came when the Valkyrian homeworld applied for Alliance membership. The species that had led the campaign to expel humanity was now begging to join the human-led Alliance. The irony was not lost on anyone, especially the humans who had once sat in the council chambers, listening to Valkyrian speeches about their primitive and emotional nature. But the Alliance accepted the Valkyrian application without hesitation. The new galactic order was not about revenge or humiliation. It was about building something better for everyone, including former enemies who were willing to change. The Valkyrian ambassador, who had replaced the one who died of shame, made a public apology on behalf of his entire species. He acknowledged that they had been wrong about humanity and wrong about the nature of galactic civilization itself. He promised that his people would work to earn their place in the Alliance through service and cooperation rather than demands and threats. It was a powerful moment that symbolized the transformation of galactic politics. The age of domination and hierarchy was ending. The age of cooperation and mutual respect had begun. The old Galactic Council was now just a footnote in history, a cautionary tale about what happened when pride and prejudice were allowed to overcome wisdom and cooperation. Future generations would study its collapse as an example of how even the mightiest civilizations could fall if they forgot the basic principles of working together, but they would also study the rise of the new Terran Alliance as proof that it was never too late to build something better, that diversity was a source of strength rather than weakness, that the future belonged to those who were wise enough to value every voice and brave enough to try new approaches to old problems. At the center of it all were the humans, not as rulers or masters, but as partners and facilitators. They had not sought to dominate the galaxy, but to help it reach its full potential. They had turned their greatest weakness, their emotional and unpredictable nature, into their greatest strength by using it to bridge the gaps between species that could not understand each other. The galaxy was a bigger and brighter place because humanity had found the courage to walk away from a system that did not value their contributions and build something new that did, and this was just the beginning. The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched out like a massive dome made of crystal and metal. Jinho walked slowly across the smooth floor, his boots making soft echoing sounds in the huge space above him. Thousands of alien delegates sat in floating chairs that moved up and down on invisible beams of light. The air smelled strange, like burned metal, mixed with flowers from a dozen Different Worlds. Jinho had been the human ambassador for 5 years now. He had seen this hall during times of peace and times of war. He had watched alien species argue and fight and make deals. But today was different. Today he carried a message that would change everything. The human walked to the center of the hall where a single platform waited. For him, the platform rose up slowly, carrying him higher so all the aliens could see him clearly. His dark suit looked simple compared to the fancy robes and armor worn by the other delegates, but Jinho did not care about looking fancy anymore. Council. Prime Nexera floated down from her high seat. Her body was made of living crystal that changed colors when she moved. Green and blue lights danced across her surface. As she spoke, her voice sounded like wind chimes mixed with thunder. Human ambassador, you have requested this emergency session. What urgent matter brings you before the council? Todai Jinho reached into his jacket and pulled out a simple piece of paper. It was white and plain looking, nothing special about it, but the words written on it would shake the galaxy. The human held up the paper so everyone could see it. Carry a message from the Terran Federation and all human colonies across the galaxy. Jinho said, his voice strong and clear. The message is simple. The human race formally withdraws from the Galactic Council effective immediately. The hall exploded into chaos. Aliens started screaming and roaring and making sounds that hurt Jinho's ears. The Vorthan delegates, who looked like giant lizards, stood up and slammed their claws on their chairs. The Aquilin traders, who were covered in soft fur, started chattering so fast their words blended together. Even the quiet Zephyrians, who rarely spoke, began whistling in alarm. Thexara slammed her energy staff against the platform floor. The sound boomed through the hall like thunder. Silence, she commanded. Order in this council. But the noise continued. Aliens were floating down from their seats, moving closer to Jinho. Some looked angry, others looked scared, a few just looked confused. The human ambassador stood calmly in the center of it all, waiting for them to quiet down. This is impossible, shouted Admiral Kexon of the Council Military Forces. The Altarian looked like a giant insect with blue and gold armor covering his body. Humans cannot simply leave. They have obligations, contracts, military duties, trade agreements. Jinho smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. It was the kind of smile that meant trouble. We have read every contract, Admiral. We have fulfilled every obligation for 300 years. Humans have served this council. We have fought your wars. We have solved your problems. We have died for species that never even learned our names. The human turned slowly, looking at all the alien faces around him. Some were familiar faces of delegates he had worked with for years. Others belonged to species that had never spoken to him except to give orders when the Devourer machines attacked the Outer Rim. Who stopped them? Jinho asked, his voice getting louder. Human soldiers died by the thousands to save worlds we had never even visited when the Great Famine hit the Spiral Arm. Who grew extra food and shipped it for free? Human farmers worked day and night to feed aliens. Who called U.S. Primitive A Motari delegate tried to interrupt, but Jinho held up his hand. When pirates attacked the trade routes, who hunted them down? Human fleets patrolled empty space for decades, keeping your cargo ships safe when the quantum communication network failed. Who fixed it? Human engineers spent years rebuilding systems you could not understand. The hall was getting quieter now. Some aliens were looking down at their hands or claws or tentacles. They remembered these things Jinho was talking about. They remembered calling for help and having humans answer every time. But what did we get in return? Jinho continued, nothing. We got called barbarians and warmongers. We got told we were too aggressive, too violent, too primitive. We got kicked out of universities and research programs. We got charged triple prices for resources from worlds we had. Savat Thexara tried to speak again. Ambassador, surely we can discuss. No, Jinho interrupted. There is nothing to discuss when human colonies needed help with crop failures. You said it was not the council's problem. When human miners asked for fair prices, you said market forces must decide. When human students applied to your schools, you said they were not intellectually suitable. The human reached into his other pocket and pulled out a small device. It looked like a simple metal box, but it contained information that would terrify every alien in the hall. You want to know what broke the camel's back? Jinho asked, using an old Earth saying that none of the aliens understood. Last month, the council voted to force human military units to guard Altarian mining operations in the contested zone, but when human colonies in that same zone asked for protection from raiders, you said we must handle Our own Security Jinho pressed a button on the device above his head. A holographic image appeared showing star maps and trade routes. The aliens gasped when they saw how many lines were colored red. These are all the hyperspace routes controlled by human space stations, Jinho said calmly. These routes carry 80% of all galactic trade, every cargo ship, every passenger transport, every military vessel uses lanes that we built and maintain. The image changed, showing more data now. The aliens could see numbers, statistics about food shipments and medical supplies and raw materials, all coming from human worlds, all going to alien planets. We grow 40% of the galaxy's food. We mine 30% of its metals. We maintain 60% of its technology. We provide 90% of its military protection. And what do we get? Called the galaxy's janitor. Some of the younger alien delegates were starting to look worried. They had grown up in a galaxy where humans fixed everything, where human soldiers protected everything, where human workers built everything. They had never imagined what would happen if humans stopped. An old gardener delegate named Velter floated down closer to Jinho. Her people looked like walking trees with kind faces made of bark and leaves. Ambassador, please, she said, her voice like wind through branches. Surely we can find a solution. Your people and mine have always been friends. Jinho looked at her with genuine sadness in his eyes. Yes, Velter, your people treated us with respect. Your people said thank you when we helped, and that is why your food shipments will continue. Your medical supplies will keep coming. Your trade routes will stay open. He looked around at the other aliens. But for the rest of you, the free ride is over. What does this mean? Demanded the Quilan trade minister. What are you saying exactly? Jinho smiled again. It means we are closing the hyperspace lanes. It means no more human food shipments to worlds that never paid fair prices. It means no more human soldiers dying to protect alien colonies. It means no more human engineers fixing your broken technology for free. But you cannot survive alone, protested a Vorthan general. Your colonies need our resources. Do we? Jinho asked, because it seems like you need our resources more than we need yours. Our worlds have been supporting themselves and half the galaxy for centuries. What exactly do you provide that we cannot make ourselves? The hall fell completely silent now. Every alien was thinking the same thing. Humans controlled the trade routes. Humans grew most of the food. Humans built most of the technology. Humans provided most of the protection. What did the rest of the galaxy actually contribute? Answer was becoming very clear and very frightening. Not much. Jinho turned off his device and put it back in his pocket. The holographic images disappeared, leaving the aliens to imagine what their worlds would look like without human support. This session is over, he announced. I will be returning to Earth tonight. Human space is now closed to council ships. If you want to visit human worlds, you can apply for permission like any other foreign power. But wait, Vextra called. What about the Devourer threat? What about the pirate raids? What about the food shortages in the Rim? Colonist Jinho was already walking toward the exit. He did not turn around when he answered, not our problem anymore. As the human ambassador left the great hall, chaos erupted again, but this time it was different. This time the aliens were not angry. They were scared. They were realizing what they had lost, and they were beginning to understand that it might be too late to get it back. The Great Galactic Council had ruled the galaxy for 2,000 years. They had thought they were in charge. They had thought the humans were just useful servants. Now they were learning the truth. The servants had been the masters all along, and the servants had just quit. 3 days after Jinho walked out of the council chamber, the first ships started disappearing from the hyperspace lanes. Captain Sungmin sat in his command chair aboard the cargo vessel Morning Star, watching his screen as alien vessels tried to navigate routes they had never learned to fly themselves. The hyperspace beacon at Junction 7 just went dark, his navigation officer reported. The whole Altarian trade fleet is stuck there. They don't know how to jump to the next system. Sungmin shrugged and took a sip of his coffee. Not our problem anymore, he said. Switch to manual navigation and take us around them. We have our own cargo to deliver. On the bridge view screen, he could see the Altarian ships floating helplessly in space. Their hulls were painted with bright colors and fancy designs, but they looked lost and confused without human guidance systems to tell them where to go. For decades, these proud aliens had insulted human intelligence. Now they could not even fly from one star to another without human help. The COM system crackled with desperate messages. Captain Sung Min, this is Trade Master Zelen. Please respond. We need navigation assistance. Our computer systems cannot calculate the hyperspace jump. Sung Min reached over and turned off the communications. He had spent 20 years helping alien ships navigate the galaxy. Most of them had never even said thank you. Now they could figure it out themselves or stay lost forever. Meanwhile, on the trading station, called Nexus Hub, the biggest marketplace in 3 sectors, panic was spreading like wildfire. Merchant Captain Bo Ra walked through the crowded corridors watching alien traders run around like scared children. Where are the human food ships? Aquilin Trader screamed at her. His fur was standing up, making him look twice as big. Where are the grain deliveries from New Seoul? Our colony worlds will starve. Bo Ra stopped and looked at the furry alien with cold eyes. You called our food primitive garbage. Last month you said Quillen farming was much more advanced. Remember that conversation? The trader's whiskers twitched nervously. That was just business talk, he said quickly. We did not mean anything by it. Bo Ra laughed. It was not just business talk. You charged us triple prices for ore while selling our food to other worlds for huge profits. You got rich off our work while calling us stupid farmers. She walked away, leaving the Quillen standing there alone. Other alien merchants were gathering around, listening to every word. They were starting to understand that the humans remembered everything, every insult, every unfair deal, every time they had been treated badly. In the medical bay of Nexus Hub, Dr. Tejo was packing up his equipment. The alien station manager, a tall, thin creature called a Spiral, had been begging him to stay all morning. Doctor, please. The Spiral said, his voice making whistling sounds. The epidemic on Vorthan Prime is getting worse. Without human medical supplies and doctors, thousands will die. Dr. Tejo sealed another case of medicine and loaded it onto his transport cart. The Vorthan Medical Council called human medicine primitive witchcraft, he said. Remember that they said our doctors were not real scientists? They said we were just lucky amateurs, but people are dying, the Spiral protested. And where were the Vorthans when the plague hit human colonies in the Outer Rim? Dr. Tejo asked. They said it was not their problem. They said humans breed too fast anyway. And some dying would be good for the galaxy. The alien station manager had no answer for that. He just watched as the last human doctor in 3 sectors packed up and left. In the other side of the galaxy, Admiral Hyjin received the first military distress calls in her command center on the battleship Soul's Pride. Her communications officer, a young woman named So Young, looked up from her console with worry in her eyes. Admiral, we are getting emergency signals from 17 different systems. The Vorthan Empire is attacking neutral worlds. The Multari pirates are raiding trade convoys. The hegemony is claiming 3 disputed systems. Admiral Hyjin studied the tactical display showing red warning lights across dozens of star systems. For 30 years, she had commanded human fleets that kept peace in this region. Human soldiers had died protecting aliens who never appreciated the sacrifice. What are our orders? Admiral So Young asked. Should we deploy the fleet? Jin smiled and shook her head. Let them handle their own problems. We are pulling all human forces back to defend human space only. But, Admiral, the Gardener worlds are under attack too, So Young said. The Gardeners have always been our friends. Jin paused at that. The Gardeners were different. They had always treated humans with respect and kindness. They had shared their knowledge freely and never demanded unfair prices for their goods. Send a message to the Gardener defense fleet, she decided. Tell them human forces will assist in protecting their worlds, but make it clear we are helping friends, not following council orders. Meanwhile, on Earth, President Nari stood in the Global Assembly building addressing representatives from every human world and colony. The Great Hall was filled with cheering and applause as she announced the new policies. My fellow humans, she said, her voice carrying across the packed auditorium. For 3 centuries we have carried the galaxy on our shoulders. We have fed alien worlds that looked down on us. We have protected species that called us barbarians. We have built technology for civilizations that said we were too primitive to understand science. The crowd roared its approval. Everyone remembered the insults and unfair treatment. Everyone had lost friends and family members fighting alien wars that had nothing to do with human interests. Today, that changes. Nari continued. From now on, human resources serve human needs first. Human soldiers protect human worlds first. Human food feeds human colonies first. Human technology advances human civilization first. In the audience, Captain Minho, a veteran of the Devourer Wars, stood up and shouted, What about the aliens who treated us fairly? What about our real friends? Nari nodded. The few species who showed us genuine respect and friendship will continue to receive our support. The gardeners will still get medical aid, the peaceful merchants will still have access to our trade routes, but everyone else must prove they deserve our cooperation. She gestured to a huge screen showing statistics about human contributions to the galaxy. Look at these numbers. We maintain 87% of all hyperspace beacons we grow and export 62% of all food. We provide 74% of all medical supplies. We build and repair 91% of all advanced technology. The crowd grew quiet as they saw the full scope of human involvement in galactic civilization. Most people had never realized how much their species did for others. Without us, the galaxy collapses, Nari said simply, and they know it. That is why they are already sending desperate messages begging us to reconsider. On the screen behind her, messages from alien governments flashed by emergency food aid requested. Medical assistance urgently needed, military support required immediately. Trade negotiations requested, all from species that had treated humans as second-class citizens, but we are not going back to the old ways, Nari declared. If they want our help, they must offer something in return: fair prices for our goods, equal treatment for our people, respect for our contributions, no more free rides, no more taking advantage of human generosity. Back on Nexus Hub, the first riots started when the food deliveries failed to arrive. Quillan traders fought with Maltari merchants over the last shipments of human grain. Vorthan officials tried to commandeer supplies meant for other species. The station security forces, mostly non-human, could not maintain order without human peacekeepers to back them up. In the council chambers on the capital world, Xara called another emergency session, but only half the delegates showed up. The others were too busy dealing with crises on their own worlds to attend political meetings. We must do something, she told the assembled aliens. The humans control too much of our infrastructure. We cannot survive without them. An old Altarian general slammed his armored fist on his desk. Then we force them to cooperate. We show them that the council is still in charge. But how? Asked a worried Spiral representative. The human defense fleets are pulling back to protect their own space. The trade routes are closing. The food shipments have stopped. What leverage do we have? The general had no answer. None of them did. They were discovering the terrible truth that the humans had been the real power in the galaxy all along. The council had been a fancy puppet show with humans pulling the strings, and now the puppeteers had walked away, leaving the puppets to Fallon, his merchant ship, heading back to human space. Captain Sung Min received a message from his old friend Captain Yun Seo. Her cargo vessel was carrying the last load of medical supplies from the Vorthan sector. The aliens are panicking, she reported. They are offering triple pay for human pilots to stay. They are promising technology transfers and trade concessions. Sing Min laughed. Too little too late, he replied. They had centuries to treat us fairly. They chose to exploit us instead. Now they can learn to survive on their own. As the human ships departed alien space behind them, the first systems began to fail. Power grids went dark without human maintenance crews. Communication networks collapsed without human technicians. Food distribution broke down without human logistics coordinators. The galaxy was learning what it meant to live without humans, and the lesson was harder than anyone had imagined. 6 months had passed since the humans walked away, and the galaxy was burning. Governor Taeyang stood on the observation deck of New Sol Colony, watching human construction ships work on expanding the orbital farms below them. The planet's surface bloomed with green fields and silver cities that grew larger every day. The COM officer approached him with the daily intelligence report. Sir, the situation in alien space continues to deteriorate. The Vorthan Empire has conquered 23 systems. The Devour machines have awakened in the Outer Rim and are consuming everything in their path. 17 trade confederations have collapsed. Taejang nodded as he read through the reports. It was almost funny how quickly everything had fallen apart without humans to hold it together. The proud alien civilizations that had called humans primitive were now proving they could not maintain basic infrastructure without human help. What about the council? He asked. Are they still pretending to be in charge? The officer smiled. The council barely exists anymore, sir. Half the member species have withdrawn to protect their own worlds. The other half spend all their time arguing about who should fix their problems none of them want to admit. They need us back on the capital world of the Galactic Council. Vexera sat alone in her crystal chamber, staring at reports that made her energy field flicker with despair. The great civilization she had helped rule for centuries was crumbling faster than anyone had imagined. Her aide, a nervous young spiral, floated into the room. Council Prime, we have received another 1,000 requests for assistance. Today alone, we got emergency calls from 47 worlds asking for food, medical supplies, military protection, and technical support. What did you tell them? Vexera asked, though she already knew the answer, that the Council lacks the resources to help. The spiral replied, we no longer have human ships to carry supplies, human doctors to treat the sick, human soldiers to fight wars, or human engineers to fix broken technology. Vexera made a sound like wind chimes breaking. How did we let this happen? How did we become so dependent on one species? The spiral had no answer because everyone knew the truth. The aliens had been happy to let humans do all the hard work while they enjoyed the benefits. Now the workers were gone and the lazy bosses could not figure out how to run anything. In the military command center, Admiral Kexon stared at tactical displays showing red zones across the galaxy. His once mighty Council fleet was scattered and overwhelmed, trying to handle crises that human forces had prevented for centuries. The Devourers have consumed the Kepler system, he reported. To his staff, 3 billion aliens dead, and we could not even slow the machines down. Our weapons barely scratched their hulls. His tactical officer, a young Altarian, looked up from her console. Sir, the human defense fleets easily defeated Devourer attacks for decades. What technology did they use that we do not have? A Kexon made an angry clicking sound with his mandibles. Everything the humans developed: better weapons, better shields, better tactics, better coordination, everything we dismissed as primitive brute force was actually superior engineering. On the human world of New Bizan, Captain So Young received visitors she had not expected to see. The Quillan Trade Federation had sent their best diplomats to beg for renewed cooperation. The furry aliens looked tired and desperate as they sat in her office. Captain So Young, one of them said, his whiskers drooping with exhaustion, we come to offer new trade agreements, better prices for human goods, technology sharing, medical cooperation. So Young leaned back in her chair and studied the aliens, who had once treated her like a second-class citizen. What makes you think we want technology from species that could not maintain their own infrastructure without our help? The lead Quillan diplomat shifted uncomfortably in his seat. We admit we made mistakes in the past. We did not fully appreciate human contributions to galactic civilization. So Young laughed. That is putting it mildly. You called us hairy barbarians who got lucky with some simple technology. You charged us triple prices for basic materials while selling our food for huge profits. You banned human students from your universities, but surely we can move past old grievances. The diplomat pleaded. Our people are starving. Without human food shipments, our sick are dying. Without human medical supplies. Where was this concern when human colonies needed help? So Young asked. When the plague hit our outer rim settlements, you said it was natural selection. When our miners needed fair prices for, or you said market forces would decide. When our children applied to your schools, you said they lacked intellectual capacity. The Quillan had no answer. They just sat there looking miserable. Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. Minesio worked in his laboratory on projects that had been delayed for decades while human scientists were busy solving alien problems. His team was developing new medical treatments, new energy sources, new space drive technology, all things they could have been working on years ago if they had not been constantly called away to fix alien disasters. His assistant Dayun brought him the latest reports from alien space. Doctor, the Vorthan plague is spreading to 30 systems now. They are offering to share all their medical knowledge if we send doctors to help them. Nesio did not look up from his microscope. Their medical knowledge is 3 centuries behind ours, he said calmly. If they had shared it willingly years ago instead of calling our medicine primitive, maybe we would consider helping now, but millions will die, Dayun said, and millions of humans died in wars we fought for ungrateful aliens. Min Sco replied, how many Vorthan doctors volunteered to help during the red fever outbreak on Mars? How many Vorthan medical supplies were donated when the neural plague hit the Jupiter colony? Dayun remembered the answer. 0 Vorthan doctors had volunteered. Zero medical supplies had been donated, the aliens had been too busy calling human medicine unscientific to offer any helping human space. Prosperity was blooming like never before. Without the burden of supporting alien civilizations, human resources flowed back to human worlds. The terraforming of Mars accelerated the asteroid. Mining operations expanded the research into faster-than-light drives advanced rapidly. Admiral 1Ho established the human defense perimeter, a ring of fortified space stations around human territory. No alien ship could pass without permission, and very few were being granted permission. Only the gardeners and a handful of other respectful species maintained trade relationships with humanity. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral 1Ho reviewed the latest intelligence reports. The alien military situation grows worse every day, he told his staff. The Council forces are losing battles they would have won easily with human support. Should we intervene, sir? Asked his tactical officer. Some of these conflicts threaten neutral species that were friendly to US. 1Ho considered this carefully. We will protect our genuine friends, he decided. Send word to the Gardener worlds that human fleets will defend them if attacked, but make it clear we are not resuming our role as galactic police. The difference was important. Humanity would help friends, but not go back to being the galaxy's unpaid security force. On the trade hub of Nexus Station, the last human businesses were packing up to leave. Station manager Veltar, a gardener who had always treated humans fairly, watched sadly as her friends prepared to depart. Captain Dongwu, she said to a human merchant who had traded on the station for 15 years, must you really leave? Cannot we find a way to continue working together? Dongwu looked at his old friend with genuine regret. You and your people were always fair to us, Veltar. You treated us as equals. You paid honest prices for our goods, but look around you. This station is falling apart without human maintenance. The other species here still treat us like servants. Veltar looked around the station and saw the truth. Garbage piled up in corridors that human janitors used to clean, power fluctuations caused by failing systems that human engineers used to maintain, fights breaking out between alien species that human peacekeepers used to prevent. I understand, she said sadly. Will you remember that some of us valued your friendship always? Dongwu replied, that is why gardener ships are still welcome in human ports. That is why your people still receive medical aid and technical support. Real friendship works both ways. As the human ships departed, Nexus Station joined the growing list of failed infrastructure across the galaxy without human expertise to maintain it. The great trading hub that had connected dozens of civilizations slowly began to shut down. The Council called another emergency session, but fewer delegates attended each time. Those who came spent their time blaming each other instead of finding solutions. The Altarians blamed the Vorthans for starting wars. The Vorthans blamed the Quillans for price manipulation. The Quillans blamed everyone else for not appreciating human contributions sooner. We need to force them back into the Council, shouted one angry delegate. We should send ultimatums, impose sanctions, make demands. With what leverage? Asked Thexara wearily. They control the hyperspace routes. They have the best military technology. They produce most of the galaxy's food and medical supplies. We have nothing they want and nothing they fear. The terrible truth was sinking in. The aliens had thought they were in charge, but they had really been passengers on a ship run by humans. Now the crew had abandoned ship and the passengers did not know how to sail in human space. The celebrations continued. Humans were free to pursue their own dreams instead of constantly rescuing ungrateful aliens. Scientists made breakthrough discoveries. 18 months after humanity walked away, the Galactic Council was getting desperate enough to try anything. Council Prime Thexara stood before what remained of the Council Assembly and announced their most ambitious plan yet. Fellow delegates, she said, her crystal form flickering with nervous energy, we will impose total economic sanctions on human space. No alien species will trade with humans. No alien ships will enter human territory. We will force them to realize they cannot survive. Alone, the few remaining delegates looked at each other with doubt. A nervous spiral representative raised one of his tentacles. Council Prime, how exactly will we enforce these sanctions when we control no trade routes that humans actually need? Texara's crystal form flashed angry red. We will blockade their space with military force. We will show them that the Council still has power. Admiral Kexon, who had been quiet during the meeting, finally spoke. Council Prime, our remaining fleet consists of 43 ships scattered across 17 sectors. The humans have consolidated over 300 vessels into their defense perimeter. How do you propose we blockade them? The sanctions lasted exactly 5 days before they collapsed completely. The aliens discovered that they needed human goods far more than humans needed alien products. Human food kept alien colonies alive. Human medical supplies prevented alien plagues. Human technology maintained alien infrastructure. Without these things, alien civilizations started dying. Meanwhile, the blockade attempt became a disaster that would be remembered as the greatest military humiliation in galactic history. Admiral Kexon led the largest fleet the Council could assemble toward the edge of human space, intending to intimidate humanity into submission. On the bridge of his flagship, the Altarian admiral felt confident as he watched his 43 ships drop out of hyperspace at the human defense perimeter. The humans would surely surrender when faced with such overwhelming force. Admiral Hyjin received the alien fleet on her command ship, Soul's Pride, surrounded by the entire human defense fleet. The sight of 300 human warships arranged in perfect battle formation should have warned Kexon that he was making a terrible mistake. Human fleet, this is Admiral Kexon of the Galactic Council Defense Force. Kexon transmitted, "You will stand down and resume your obligations to the galactic community. This is your final warning." Admiral Hyjin smiled as she activated her response channel. "Alien fleet, this is Admiral Hyjin of the Human Defense Force. You have entered human space without permission. Turn around immediately or face the consequence." Kexon made the fatal mistake of thinking human warnings were as empty as alien threats. He ordered his fleet to advance toward the human defensive line. The battle lasted exactly 11 minutes and 37 seconds. Human military technology perfected through centuries of warfare proved devastatingly superior to alien ships designed more for show than actual combat. The Council fleet had been built to intimidate weaker species, not fight a peer opponent. Human weapons cut through alien shields like paper. Human fighters danced around clumsy alien battleships. Human tactics, coordinated by quantum-linked battle computers, overwhelmed alien command systems. Kexon's flagship limped away from the battle zone, its hull breached in 17 places. Its crew barely alive. The rest of his fleet was either destroyed or disabled, drifting helplessly in space. Human rescue ships collected the survivors not out of mercy, but to send a message. Admiral Hyjin transmitted on all galactic frequencies. "Human space is sovereign territory. Any attempt to violate our borders will be met with overwhelming force. This is the Council's only warning." The broadcast was received across the galaxy, showing alien species what happened when someone tried to force humans to do anything. The message was clear: humanity was no longer a servant species to be ordered around. Back in the Council chambers, the few remaining delegates watched the battle footage in horrified silence. Their mighty fleet had been swept aside like debris in a hurricane. The humans had not even deployed their full strength, just enough ships to prove their point. "We cannot defeat them militarily," whispered a Vorthan general. His species had conquered dozens of systems, but they had never faced humans in serious battle. "Then we try sabotage," suggested a Maltari spy master. "We infiltrate their worlds, disrupt their infrastructure, create internal pressure for them to return to the Council." Sabotage attempts proved even more humiliating than the military defeat. Human intelligence services had been watching alien activities for decades. They knew every agent, every safe house, every communication channel. Within hours of the sabotage order being given, every alien spy in human space was arrested. Captain Minho, now head of human intelligence, stood in his office reviewing the interrogation reports. The aliens had tried to sabotage power plants, communication hubs, and transportation systems, but they had been caught before they could cause any damage, sir, his deputy reported. "We intercepted all their communications, decoded all their plans, and arrested all their operatives before they could act." The alien intelligence services are decades behind ours. Minho was not surprised. Human intelligence had been protecting alien worlds from sabotage for centuries. They knew every trick, every technique, every weakness. Now they turned that knowledge against their former employers. The captured alien agents were returned to their governments with a simple message: any further attempts at sabotage will be considered acts of war. Human space is protected by the most advanced intelligence network in the galaxy with military force and sabotage, both proving useless. The Council tried their most desperate gambit, yet they offered humanity junior membership in a reformed council with better terms and more respect. Ambassador Jin-Ho, who had triggered the whole crisis by walking out of the council chamber, received the alien delegation in his office on Luna Station. The aliens looked desperate and defeated as they presented their offer. Ambassador Jin-Ho, the lead delegate, a spiral named Lexhan, said, "We propose a new arrangement. Humans would have senior status in the Council, full voting rights, priority access to all resources, equal representation in all decisions." Jin-Ho listened to the proposal with barely concealed contempt. "You still don't understand, do you?" he said finally. "This isn't about getting better treatment from the Council. This is about not needing the Council at all." "But surely," the spiral protested, "humanity benefits from galactic cooperation, the sharing of knowledge, the cultural exchange, the mutual defense agreements. What knowledge have you shared that we didn't already know?" Jin-Ho asked. "What culture have you offered that enriched human civilization? What defense have you provided that we couldn't provide better ourselves?" The alien delegation had no answer, because the truth was that humanity had been carrying the entire galactic civilization on its shoulders. The Council had been nothing but a bureaucracy that took credit for human achievements while contributing nothing of value. "We are offering you partnership," Lexhan said desperately. "Equal status in a reformed galaxy." Jin-Ho stood up and walked to the window overlooking the thriving human colonies on Luna. Below them, construction crews worked on new cities while transport ships carried supplies between worlds. Everything was running smoothly without any alien help. "You're offering us the chance to go back to solving your problems for you," he said without turning around. "You're offering us the privilege of sacrificing human lives for alien interests. You're offering us the honor of being blamed when your civilizations fail." The aliens tried to interrupt, but Jin-Ho held up his hand. "For 3 centuries we believed that galactic unity was worth any sacrifice. We believed that helping others was always the right thing to do. We believed that eventually you would treat us as equals, but you never did. You treated us as useful tools to be discarded when convenient." He turned back to face the delegation. "You had your chance to be partners. You chose to be exploiters instead. Now you want us back because your civilizations are collapsing without us. But we've learned something important in the past 18 months. "What is that?" Lexhan asked, though he dreaded the answer. "We don't need you," Jin-Ho said simply. "We never needed you. You needed us. We can build our own civilization, trade with our own colonies, defend our own worlds, explore our own space without any help from species that spent centuries insulting our intelligence." The alien delegation left empty-handed, carrying humanity's final message to the Council. When you can stand as equals instead of beggars, when you can offer genuine partnership instead of demanding service, when you can contribute something meaningful instead of just taking, then maybe we can talk. Until then, solve your own problems. The Council's attempts to force humanity back had failed completely. Military threats had been crushed, economic sanctions had backfired, sabotage had been thwarted, diplomatic bribes had been rejected. The aliens were finally learning that they had no power over a species that no longer needed their approval, and humanity was discovering that freedom felt even better than they had imagined. 2 years had passed since the humans walked away, and the galaxy had changed forever. President Nari stood in her office on Earth, reading reports that would have been unimaginable before humanity's withdrawal. The Devour machines had consumed 43 star systems. The Vorthan Empire controlled a third of known space. 17 different wars raged across the galaxy without human peacekeepers to stop them. But the most surprising news came from unexpected sources. Several alien species had finally learned to solve their own problems. The Zephyrians, who had been helpless merchants for centuries, had developed effective defense fleets. The Maltari had built their own trade networks. The Gardeners had created new agricultural techniques that fed their growing population. Her aide colonel, One Seek, brought her the daily intelligence summary. "Madame President, the aliens are adapting. Some species are actually becoming stronger without human assistance." Senori nodded as she reviewed the reports. It was what she had hoped for but never expected. Necessity was finally teaching alien species to stand on their own feet. Instead of depending on human strength, the Quillen have developed their own medical research programs, One Seek continued. They're making progress against diseases they previously expected humans to cure. The Spirals have built hyperspace navigation systems that actually work without human guidance, Goodnari said. That's what should have happened centuries ago instead of growing stronger, they grew dependent on us. Now crisis is forcing them to develop their own capabilities. But the most significant development was happening in the ruins of the Galactic Council itself. Council Prime Vexora had been removed from power after the military disaster at the Human Defense Perimeter. The new council leadership was completely restructured with representatives from species that had learned to survive without human help. On the council capital world, Ambassador Veltar of the Gardeners addressed the reformed assembly. Her bark-like face showed the wisdom of a species that had always treated humans with respect. Fellow delegates, she said, her voice like wind through leaves, we must acknowledge the truth. The old council failed because it was built on exploitation. We used human strength to avoid developing our own. We used human intelligence to avoid thinking for ourselves. We used human sacrifice to avoid taking risks ourselves. The assembled aliens, mostly newcomers, who had earned their seats through actual achievement rather than inherited privilege, listened carefully. Many of them were representatives of species that had never been allowed in the old council because they were considered too primitive. The humans taught us a valuable lesson, Veltar continued, not through their words but through their absence. They showed us that true strength comes from within, that real civilization requires effort and sacrifice, that genuine respect must be earned, not demanded. In the audience, young delegates from species that had adapted to life without humans nodded in agreement. They had learned these lessons the hard way through years of struggle and growth. On Luna Station, Ambassador Jinho received an unexpected visitor. Council Prime Vexora herself had come to human space in a small diplomatic ship, her crystal form dim with exhaustion and defeat. She looked nothing like the proud leader who had once commanded the galaxy. Ambassador Jinho, she said, her voice harmonics crackling with emotion, I come to beg, not for the council but for the billions who are dying because of our arrogance. Jinho studied the former council leader with calm eyes. You were warned what would happen if you continued treating us as servants. You chose to ignore those warnings for 3 centuries, I know, Vexora admitted. We were fools. We were so used to your strength that we forgot it was a gift, not a right. We were so comfortable with your service that we never learned to serve ourselves. Through the viewport, Luna's surface stretched out below them, covered with thriving human cities and growing industrial complexes, everything built by human hands for human benefit without alien interference. Please, Vexora continued, the Devourers are consuming entire civilizations. The wars are spreading across the galaxy. Billions of innocents are suffering for the mistakes of their leaders. Jinho turned to face the desperate alien leader. And what did you do when human innocents suffered? Did you send aid when the plague hit our colonies? Did you offer help when pirates attacked our merchants? Did you provide assistance when our children needed education? Vexora's crystal form flickered with shame. No, we did not. We said those were human problems to be solved by humans. Exactly, Jinho replied. And now you have alien problems to be solved by aliens. That's how it should have been from the beginning, but we cannot solve them alone. Vexora protested. Our civilizations are too weak, too dependent. We never learned the skills you have, then you'll learn them now, Jinho said, or you'll die trying. That's what humans had to do when we were alone in the galaxy. We didn't have anyone to rescue us, so we learned to rescue ourselves. Is there no compassion left in humanity? Vexora asked desperately. No mercy for those who realize their mistakes too late. Jinho was quiet for a long moment, watching human cargo ships deliver supplies to the few alien species that had earned continued cooperation. The Gardeners would receive medical aid because they had always been friends. The peaceful merchants would get protection because they had always been honest. A handful of others would survive because they had shown respect. There is compassion, he said finally, but it's reserved for those who showed us compassion when we needed it. There is mercy, but only for those who showed us mercy when we were weak. There is help, but only for those who helped us when we asked. He turned back to face Vexora. Your species and most others chose exploitation over cooperation. You chose to take everything and give nothing back. You chose to treat us as servants instead of partners. Now you want us to forget centuries of abuse. Because you're finally facing consequences? What would it take? Dexter asked. What could we possibly offer to earn your forgiveness? Jinho shook his head. You're still thinking like the old council. You still believe this is about making deals and offering payment. This isn't about what you can give us, it's about what you can become. He gestured toward the reports on his desk, showing the few species that were successfully adapting to independence. Some of your people are learning to stand alone. They're developing their own technologies, building their own defenses, solving their own problems. They're becoming the equals we always hoped you could be. And then Jinho continued, we can work with equals. We can respect partners, we can help friends, but we won't go back to being the galaxy's unpaid servants. Thixara left Luna Station empty-handed, but she carried humanity's final message to what remained of the galactic community. When your species can stand as strong, independent civilizations, when you can offer genuine partnership instead of demanding service, when you can prove you've learned from your mistakes, then perhaps we can build something better together. Until then you're on your owning human space. The celebrations continued. 2 years of independence had transformed humanity from a servant species into the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. Their technology had leaped forward without the burden of maintaining alien infrastructure. Their culture had flourished without the need to accommodate alien sensibilities. Their military had become unstoppable through focus and determination. Professor Yu Jin taught the final lesson to her students at Terra University on Earth. Remember what we learned, she told the young humans who would inherit this new galaxy. Strength that protects weakness makes weakness stronger, but strength that replaces weakness makes weakness permanent. The galaxy had to learn to be strong on its own, and humanity had to learn to value itself. The harsh lesson was almost complete. Some alien species were adapting and growing stronger, others were failing and fading away. It was natural selection on a galactic scale. Humanity had given the universe the greatest gift possible. They had forced it to grow up. The age of human servitude was over. The age of genuine galactic civilization built on mutual respect and shared strength was just beginning. And if some species couldn't adapt to that new reality, then perhaps they didn't deserve to survive in it. The humans had walked out and the galaxy had panicked too late, but from that panic, a stronger, more honest civilization might finally emerge.